Does your new mic even work? Did they send you a dud? It's nice and see-through. When I fire you for rushing me, I'm gonna buy the same ones to film myself. Are we ready?
We're rolling.
Well, you got it. I told you, tell me when you're rolling. Ladies and gentlemen, Jay McInnes, Sharp Real Estate Group, episode 292, No View for You. What are we talking about today? Today we are talking about ye old historic rules around what the kids these days are calling view cones. What the hell are view cones, Al? View corridors, do we need them? Why is the older generation pissed that they are getting removed? Should they be removed? Should they be edited? What are they? What's going on? So you can see the Space Invaders-esque map behind me there, which gives you a little context to what we're talking about today. Some background. View cone policy, also known as the view protection guideline, was first introduced way back in 1989. Al, I was 8. What was that? I was in grade 3, just running the fields of Kitchener Elementary, just life. There was nothing going on in the world that was negative. Everything was perfect. And then view cones got invented. Protectionist element that was layered onto city bylaws. This identifies a series of views from specific locations around Vancouver. The city believes had to be preserved, meaning that new buildings either had to avoid these areas or get creative to avoid obstructing these areas. We'll get into a little bit more detail than what you see behind me here, but as you can probably tell, the origin of these areas are at these starting points and then just fan out from there. And everyone within the red better watch out. Don't buy land in there because you're not going to be able to go as high as possible. All view cones are facing north except for one. And may be indeed unique, allowing clear lines of sight from Queen Elizabeth Park, for example, all the way through downtown. It reads here through downtown sea of buildings, and of course to the North Shore mountains. So they wanted to, once development really began, kind of in the 80s there, and coming into the 90s, they really wanted to get ahead of not having kind of a Manhattan-esque skyline here. So what they did was created this very unique set of rules, which is only being kind of filed away now, and it's really created the feel and the look of our connection to nature here in Vancouver. And this has been manipulated a little bit over the years, but until now, it's more or less still been in place, the exact same implementation since '89. Vancouver's protected public views, often referred to as view cones, are considered a defining element of the Vancouver brand, said city staff in a report to council. For residents, visitors, and newcomers, these views maintain a vital connection to nature and shaping the city's unique identity. So there's been, if you do or don't know what these are, there's been a very deliberate set of rules in place for 30 plus years now that have really kept things. We think that the downtown, for example, has developed so greatly, but it's very much not only within zoning guidelines, but these view corridors or view cones have really shaped what has been allowed to take place on the ground here. So the policy provides certainty for developers in cases where their proposed towers would penetrate a view cone. The city works with them to redesign their shape to keep the same density or allow density to be transferred off-site to another location for them. So even though these are here, there is still a bit of give and take with it, but it's definitely a framework that they have wanted to hold steady with and have for the most part. The read continues on here. As time went by, the city did allow for a bit of wiggle room. It considered permissions for tall buildings to enter a view cone if they demonstrated a new benchmark of architectural creativity and excellence, while making a significant contribution to the beauty and visual power of the city's skyline. So some examples of this include Shangri-La, Vancouver House, Trump International Hotel and Tower, since renamed Paradox Hotel. And more recent examples of another allowance comes from 2018 when council of that day, under that mayor, Gregor Robertson, permitted a tower to enter view cones if the developer kept all the units as rental housing. So as you can see by this, if we're doing something substantial, they will allow penetration into these view cones, or of course, even back then, whenever that was quoted, 2018, during the times as we all obviously find ourselves in now, needing rental, they will allow those cones to be penetrated as well. The ABC party amended this policy through their Unlocking Housing and Economic Opportunities plan recently. This is why we're kind of bringing this up now, because they're finally chipping away at the severity of these cones. We allow ourselves to waste time slowly shaving off thousands of desperately needed housing units and job spaces for an already conservative and limited plan by abiding by these view cone restrictions, says City Councillor Terry Reasonable. I don't know how reasonable Terry Reasonable actually is, but he's the man that they're talking to. View cones don't matter if the only view you can afford is of the dumpster in your back laneway, as they protect the privilege over the needs of the many. So this obviously has a certain narrative to it here. More housing, cheaper housing. What can we do to remove restriction and get housing cheaper? Obviously, I have an opinion on this, but we'll save that to later. The argument of democratizing access to beauty from the arbitrary legacy locations assumes the city is rooted in a foregone understanding of the city that people go to those areas on their off hours. People can afford to even get there all the time if they even wanted to consider. Transportation costs are now climbing, and arbitrary beauty overtakes care of all our citizens in definition of responsible socioeconomic policy. So, same narrative here we've heard a bunch of times before. Things are expensive. This is restricting people. People can't go to these viewpoints anyway because transit is expensive. Again, all these things are all city-run problems that are more expensive, but that's a whole other reality check to this conversation, which we won't get into. So the details here, of the 38 pre-existing view cones derived from 18 original points, 14 view cones and 2 origin points were eliminated, bringing an amount of view cones down to 24, with 11 also receiving updates. The 11 view cones that were updated were narrowed, redefined, or slightly relocated, and 13 cones were retained as is. The 14 cones eliminated were already substantially compromised, either by selling, trading with developers for project allowances or natural tree growth. So obviously over 30 years, a lot of the cones that they showed just had trees coming into them, and God forbid we prune a tree. They're just eliminating the cones altogether. According to city staff, the decision unlocks 108 to 215 million square feet of space for developers to build projects under current city guidelines. So, sounds a little extreme, but that's what they're going with. So, as we get here, let's give you another little example here. So, these are some of the view cones. So you can see you've got some penetration points here, yada. But what they wanted is everything built below. And you've also got lower view cones, but this one specifically saves the mountains, as you will, as we're known for. So another example here, this is one view cone going back. God forbid you can't see City Hall from Cambie Street Bridge, so that's protected. You've got some penetration into E1 here from the stadium, of course. What else do we have? So here's an update. You've got what it used to be and what it is now. So they've kind of, as you can see, run it to about here, slimmed it out so you now have availability. for towers. More towers, more towers. Here, whole thing covered basically. They've brought it up, cut a hole in the middle, so we can expect some towering to take place over here. So this is the sort of thing they're dealing with when developers go to the city and they say, this is what I want to build on my lot. The city says, all that's fine, but the view cones. We can't penetrate the view cones. So here, obviously, full spectrum, and then you've got that tightened right up, allowing for flexibility and a little bit more flexibility below. So that's kind of what it is. That's what's been amended. What is the good and bad? The good, more density allowance, of course, more development, generally speaking, more density with views. Obviously, that's only going to cater to the higher end. And the value of land will go up where you can now build being more exposed here. And just generally speaking, it's allowing for more height per the lots that are already in these zones. What is the bad? Another restrictive density play, reactive density play for the current narrative of the city, which you could argue is going to decay the feel of the city. The whole reason they did this in the first place, so we feel so connected when you can visually see the mountains, the water, the green from a variety of original locations there. It was a very protected view. So now they're kind of reacting based on the current narrative of obviously density is needed, more homes are needed, and that's going to then break this down, and you're going to start seeing a lot more. I use New York as an example, but a lot more kind of craziness flying up and then into these views. Do we just turn into a concrete jungle now that we've got more density allowed on top of what we've already got, specifically around the water and in downtown? Only in the front row will people get the full Vancouver view experience. So obviously, looking at all this land here, specifically in downtown, specifically just into the kind of border here, east and west side, up close to the water, this obviously isn't cheap real estate to begin with. These really aren't avenues of creating any more affordability or anything like that. If you want to go on the narrative that just more real estate is good, they're going to build higher end based on the land cost anyway, and then the new higher end is higher end than the old higher end. So in theory, the whole market will come up with that. This will allow for buildings of obviously high-end view properties, and again, doesn't help the little guys, which I think in theory everyone likes to think they're doing when they make these changes. It's helping the little guys, and will still not enable the creation of affordable housing as the land is simply too expensive, obviously, specifically in downtown and on these key kind of waterfront neighborhoods. So the good and the bad is a little bit mixed. I think it's a very reactive thing. Is it necessary? Maybe not. If they get rid of it, does it change the city dramatically? Well, maybe not in the next 5 years, but in the next 30, most definitely. Some other keynotes here that a few people tied into, which I found, this is not going to create affordable housing, but it will make a whole bunch of landowners very, very wealthy, added former CTV news anchor Tamara Taggart. She has chipped in on this here. Not too happy about it. Larry Beasley. As for rationale, the overhauling view cones would open up new density for affordable housing. Beasley says it would have been helpful to offer the public an exact accounting of the affordable units gained. I think there's a bit of mockery here. It's not the case at all. Also, without policy to mandate affordability, the market will just do what it does, especially if downtown land goes for the premium that it does. If I was a developer with one of those sites, I wouldn't be thinking about any kind of affordable housing. He says they're going to be the apartments with spectacular views. And you know, and I know how much that adds value to an apartment. Now, maybe they will allow for taller buildings and get some of the affordable units, but you know they'll be down at the bottom anyway. So this is not going to open up any level of views. Not that that was the intention, but for the cheaper inventory. We need to protect some views, but it's gotten crazy, says architect James Cheng on a previous interview with Stories. They even have a view cone for someone walking on the Cambie Street Bridge. Why do we need a view from one stationary point in the middle of a bridge? So, what do you think? Do we need the view cones? Do we not? Is this just a bunch of old people complaining, the NIMBYs as they call them, that things are changing? Is this just outdated rules that were stupid in the first place? Can we really impact the skyline that much that it's really gonna change things? I don't know. Do you know, Al? Do you know? Comment below with your thoughts. Is it dumb? Is it smart? Should we see just bountiful development for all? I think the affordability play is just a non-starter in Vancouver moving forward, period. The land is too expensive. The tax dollars are gone and highly mismanaged, and I just don't see that. And I also don't see why that should be in said key, most expensive neighborhoods of the province anyway. Just move out a little. You don't need to worry about it. Take a SkyTrain, take a bus, everything will work out just fine.